wrestling star.
You're
So,
trying to
anywho,
can't be.
just in case anybody doesn't know, my name is Hazel. I'm one of the co-owners of Wrestling Fans Speak Out. This is our trail and his trusty sidekick, the other owner of. She's your trusty sidekick. The other owner of Wrestling Fans Speak Out. This is Mike. He lives here.
Kind of a wrestling entrepreneur.
You're like the encyclopedia.
Now I know somebody that's a little bit more in depth than I am, but I don't want to. I don't want to put their names out there. You know who I'm talking about if you're watching.
Okay, so we were starting to do the top 10 years that were registered. Somebody posted like the top 10 years of wrestling. And we did the first 5, but then my laptop died, my phone was dying, everything was like falling apart. So we thought we would carry on. So we are going to start with which they said was the 5th greatest WWE year, and they said that was 2014.
Or 14, okay.
And this is what they said. Batista won the Royal Rumble that year and prepared for the main event appearance in WrestleMania.
Yeah.
WWE fans in attendance revolted with the same chants they had long been using to reflect their frustrations with the company's creative direction, yelling Daniel Bryan. Before the year was over, though, WWE faithfuls would be rewarded with their patience as Daniel Bryan captured the WWE World Championship. Then let's see. It says a personal favorite among them would have to be the company's booking of the Shield. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
The Wyatt family toured the house in an elimination chamber to their rivalry with their Evolution and the shocking breakup that it led to. WWE ended near a perfect booking of the faction by turning them into 3 single superstars. Nobody had a more shocking 2014 than Brock Lesnar, who ended Undertaker's WrestleMania streak. Could we go on about that guy in the crowd?
Oh yeah.
The face seen around the world. And literally everyone would go on to beat John Cena in a glorified squash match at SummerSlam. Let me see. Add to this, the rise of NXT is one of the greatest wrestling promotions in the world, and you really got to start wondering what years could possibly do better. Can I just point out a memory from NXT? Could we not do that right now because it's going to interfere with this? You remember NXT? The first time NXT was seen on TV, they were in Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
And we had some dumbass friends who, oh my God.
I think I know where you're getting at.
Basically, NXT did their very first show in Milwaukee. At the end of the show, they went back to the hotel where we were all hanging out and staying. 2 of our, was it 2 or 3?
It was 2 of them.
Okay, 2 of our very good friends, James, and I'm so embarrassed to say the godfather of my children, decided that they were going to go and show NXT stars wrestling moves and how to wrestle.
It is on our
James and Roosevelt had never set foot in a wrestling ring, had they?
No.
Never set foot in a wrestling ring. Yet a showing, Wade Barrett, Daniel Bryan was there if I remember rightly.
I know David Otunga was there.
Yeah, David Otunga was there. And there was a couple more who were sat around drinking beer and having pizza and stuff. I'm humiliated that the man I chose to be the godfather of my boys decided that that was the time he was going to show WWE wrestlers how to wrestle. We have it on film.
Yep, we do.
We have it on film. You have never seen anything so hilarious in my life. You're like, oh. Okay, I have to mention my Jazzy Poo. One of our, oh my God, we've been with Jasmine since, oh my God, the beginning.
Right.
And we did wrestling shows with her. I still want those boots, by the way, Jasmine. You ain't got away with that one. I want those boots. We did wrestling shows with her. We were BW3s for wrestling events.
Right.
we cried when, well, I did, cried when she went to Florida to work for Disney. Then she had a beautiful little baby boy named Prince. Then went traveling the world with her family and everything. And that's my Jazzy Poo. Look, that's my Jazzy. So I'm really happy to see your face. I love you bunches, and we miss you so, so, so much. I would give anything for just one of those Saturdays again. BW3s.
Sundays,
Sundays, sorry, because that was always the best. That was always the best. We had the greatest times. We had stupid t-shirts made because we had people who really, really hated John Cena. Then we had the John Cena fans, and then we had the people in between. And oh my God, those days were just great. Those days were absolutely great. But going back to the whole NXT thing, we will post it because it was so hilarious. But we do have it on video.
Yes, we do. If you want to look for it, it's on our WFSO YouTube page. Can't even remember what the name is called.
I think it was WFSO Host Show NXT Wrestlers How to Wrestle was what I think it's called. But we'll find it and we will post it up because it's the stupidest thing you've ever seen in your entire life. Because these wrestlers were being so polite, but they could understand they had two drunk fans in front of them trying to body slam and sleeper holds and everything. And there's me and AJ and a bunch of us in the background going, just look at him, just look at him. I hope you do visit ASAP. They don't do pay-per-views at BW3s anymore. They stopped doing them.
But
Romines does. Dave and Buster's does.
Yeah, Dave and Buster's does.
So perhaps what we could do, Jazzy, is arrange for when you can be up here and we can like meet at BW3s, because I know then that would keep your boy entertained, and perhaps we can get some of the old crowd together. So, okay, the number 4 is one of the greatest years, 1998.
The Attitude Era again.
The write-ups is, oh shit, WCW.
The rise.
Well, the accuracy of that quote is perhaps somewhat dubious. The sentiment is hard to argue. Although they've been building towards it for some time, the world wasn't quite ready for what WWE had in store for us when they unleashed the full force of Attitude Era. There will certainly include sex, violence, and immature yet irresistible humor that goes along with that particular time. It's mostly a statement about how Stone Cold Steve Austin secured victory for the WWE in the Monday Night Wars. Every week that glass shattered and Austin continued his battle. Millions of people that had never watched pro wrestling tuned in just to see what would happen next.
Yep.
All-time classic moments could go down to Mick Foley's dive off the cell at King of the Ring. The Rock taking over the Nation of Domination and feuding with Triple H's DX or Kane and Undertaker's compelling soap opera rivalry. Every single week, WWE was using Monday Night Raw as a platform for the most shocking, unexpected entertainment of all television.
True.
Right.
So, thoughts?
Well, it was a big year for him, especially like Austin become champion for the first time. And although it was kind of like short-lived for the first reign, then had his second reign.
And every other one after that. The first and only champion to actually have his own created title. Everybody remembers the Smoking Skull belt, I'm pretty sure. And every year it was centered around what Austin and McMahon were going to do to each other next.
Yeah, that's true. Also,
and then of course that was the Rock's fourth coming. When
the Rock's fourth coming,
when he finally broke away from his father and his grandfather, because of course his father was the great Peter Maivia, and his his father was Rocky Johnson, and his grandfather the great High Chief Peter Maivia. That was Rock's that was his way of breaking away from his father and his grandfather and becoming his own persona as just The Rock. And that was the first time in a long time you actually had somebody that could not only wrestle, but had some of the still to this day, some of the greatest catchphrases ever in wrestling. and some of the greatest interviews ever in wrestling. Also very entertaining.
Right.
That's when DX came to be, and that's when they were pushing the envelope every week, almost getting thrown off the air on more than one occasion.
I'm surprised they wanted to talk about WCW that much on that because like they were doing some good things too. Like
Yeah, but this is WWE predominantly.
oh okay, I thought they
It's
were
not
talking
that
about WCW.
it's not that WCW wasn't doing anything; it was just getting stale because they were using people that didn't need to be used in like major storylines, and even if they did, they didn't know how to use them for the storyline. Like every week, it was the same thing: NWO, WCW, WCW, NWO. All the lower talent was getting pushed aside for a storyline that you were seeing every week. It was the same thing every week. Like the end of Hogan was running roughshod. He was the champion. Scott Hall and Kevin Nash would be the tag team champions. They would lose the titles or they would cheat to keep them. Hogan hardly ever wrestled. He'd come out there and cut like a 15-minute promo. That'd be the end. That'd be the last time you would see him, except for probably at the very end of the show. And then, of course, WO would come out there running a rough shot over WCW, and then Sting would mysteriously appear from the rafters, and that was pretty much like the whole show. It was like that every single week. And then you had like every once in a while you would have a cruiserweight title match, and that was mostly like Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio, or Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko, or Eddie Guerrero, and it was like the same show almost every week.
Kind of
It's not like
what
they were
now,
really doing
like,
very much anything. They were just doing the same. They was like recycling shows every week, pretty much. I don't see how they were beating WWE in the ratings because they weren't really doing much of anything.
I think it was probably just mostly the NWO was doing it for them. And I'm thinking with I think Goldberg had debuted that year, The Rise of Goldberg.
Yeah,
think
Kevin Nash messed that all up for him, but hey, that's just my opinion.
Okay, the next year they said 1997. That's number 3. And it says it's one of their best years, they say, but for a different reason. It says it's not as infamous as 98, nor would it bring the same kind of ratings, but it perhaps remains the most intelligent year in WWE history. It says, before WWE would go all in on the edgy attitude, they spent much of this year implementing compelling shades of grey into nearly every story and aspect. We often talk about anti-hero and tweeners in pro wrestling, but this is the only year that they can remember those concepts being executed perfectly. It was the year that we saw Steve Austin act as a bona fide 100% heel and get more cheers than anyone on the roster. It was the year that saw Bret Hart become the biggest heel in America while remaining the biggest babyface in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
It was the year that saw Shawn Michaels and Triple H get treated like gods for telling people to suck it. And in which Rocky, how do you pronounce his last name?
Maivia.
Thank you. Became an international star by telling us how much he hated the fans. Nothing played out quite the way that anyone expected it to, but by rolling with the punches, WWE produced a higher quality form of wrestling storytelling than anyone thought possible. Even the better match quality during this time never suffered in the same way it sometimes would when overbooking of the Attitude Era was in full swing. From Bret Hart and Steve Austin's game-changing I Quit match at WrestleMania 13 to Shawn Michaels' Taker's bona fide 5-star Hell in a Cell classic. This year contains some of the greatest WWE matches of all time. No, it wasn't the year that made WWE King of the World, but it's one of the most compelling of old school pro wrestling and new era storytelling.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with that. Especially what you was mentioning about, the foundation at the start of DX.
That's where the Attitude kicked off. That was 97. This man came on television that night before Monday Night Raw even aired. He came out this big speech about how it's time to stop assaulting the fans' intelligence. No more was it gonna be good guy versus bad guy. It was gonna be like the fan reaction that made the show run, which is exactly what they said with Austin. The reason why Austin got so much cheers is because even though he was a heel, his character was built to be a heel, but he was one of those guys that would like fight the power. He wasn't going to come out there and do what Vince wanted him to do or Mr. McMahon wanted him to do. He was going to do his way.
He was basically this is just my thought. He was like the working man's hero.
That's exactly what he was. He was for the blue collar.
Because he was the one who did what everybody wanted to do, and when they told their boss to go stick it,
and then
he did it for you, you know.
With Shawn Michaels and Triple H, that pretty much all started off. Pretty much, if you want to be technical, that started off with the 1997 SummerSlam. And for those of you that remember it, the final match was Undertaker versus Bret Hart, and Shawn Michaels was a special guest referee. And for those of you who remember what happened at the end, Bret was going to use a chair. Shawn got the chair from him. Bret Hart spit on him. Shawn Michaels swung the chair. Bret moved. Undertaker got hit. Shawn Michaels had to count the 3 count. And then that whole 24-hour period before Raw aired, everybody was wondering, like, why did Shawn do what he did? And then Shawn came out and did, like, this big elaborate speech on how the fans turned on him and all this stuff. And then, like, DX kicked off. And, of course, being that was, like, the Rebel years, you know, DX just fit perfectly with that. They were heels too, but they were getting so much of a crowd reaction. They instantly became heel. They became baby faces out of reaction. Like Vince McMahon said, it was time to, you know, throw away the cliches of good guy versus bad guy, and you know, it's starting to tend the fans' intelligence. It was time for the fans to be like more part of the show than ever before. That's why all the catchphrases came out, you know, suck it, and can you smell what the Rock is cooking? And Austin 316 says, I just whipped your ass. That's where all the good catchphrases came from. And to this day, people still remember those catchphrases.
Well, let's be honest. Speaking as parents, we have had to deal with the infamous suck it quote being said by a child when he was 7 years old in school. Everybody has done the can you smell what the Rock is cooking? Mm-hmm. If you haven't, you're a liar. I'm just putting it out there.
Well, for those of the people that were watching it back then.
I wasn't even watching it back then, and people were still going around saying it.
Especially like you said, that 7-year-old was watching some of the classic stuff and things like that.
This is basically what happened. My son, he was 7 years old. He was in school, and we got a phone call saying Robert got in trouble with one of his teachers, so he did the DX crotch chop and yelled, "Suck it." Now, there's an element of pride and an element of horror and an element of, oh, he's in trouble. So when he got home, I read the note that his teacher put in his folder, and his teacher actually put in there that him and another kid had been messing around. This other kid told Robert that wrestling was fake. Robert did the crotch chop and said, "Suck it." His teacher asked him why he did that, and he said, "And you can suck it too." As I say, it's one of those things where you want to be proud. But, yeah. So, thank you, WWE, for that one.
Oh, my God. That's so funny. And plus, with the Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels situation with Bret's last match and end up being his final match in WWE.
That's technically true.
Yeah, that's true.
At the time.
At the time.
Yeah, at the time. With that incident with they call it the Montel screw job, and I'm probably sure that most of y'all probably already knew that.
Uh-huh.
With the Bret screw Bret.
Uh-huh.
Okay, you ready for the next one?
Sure.
The number 2 year, 2002.
I see.
Says, after botching the invasion storyline in 2001, wrestling fans everywhere wondered if WWE was capable of thriving in a world without real competition. It was a fair question, made all the more intriguing by the fact that the company just received a significant influx of new talent that all would need to find a home in this new world where WWE was the only real game in town. Yet with the weight on the wrestling world on their shoulders, WWE came through in spectacular form in 2012, starting with the tremendous return of Triple H at Madison Square Garden.
Oh, you mean 2002?
2002, sorry, yeah.
I remember that I was watching Raw that night.
WWE seemed determined to produce weekly television worthy, beating the toughest competition, even though there was very little to be found. They apologized for the invasion in their own way by bringing back the NWO and key pieces of talent like Rey Mysterio, who was sorely missed. They gave wrestling one of the most awe-inspiring matches of all time as The Rock took on Hulk Hogan.
That's May 17.
Shawn Michaels made a stunning return and immediately entered into a heated feud with Triple H.
Mm-hmm.
And just when you thought they couldn't possibly top themselves, they did week after week. Through it all, there seemed to be one storyline everyone seems to remember, and that's the rise of Brock Lesnar, dubbed the next best thing. Yeah. His meteoric rise to the top was paved with the blood of Hulk Hogan, The Rock, and Undertaker, and anyone else who got in his way. All of this, and then there was time to mention the first Elimination Chamber, the SmackDown 6, or the gripping ladder match between The Undertaker and Jeff Hardy.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
That's what Jeff Hardy apparently earned Undertaker's respect.
Oh, yeah, for the WWE title.
Yeah.
Yeah, because at the time, they was having, like, the champion was able to go to both shows. I think it was mostly during... Because that year, they did start the split that year, right?
Yeah, they had 2 different belts for each show. They had the Undisputed title on SmackDown, and then Eric Bischoff brought back the world title and presented it to Triple H on episode of Raw that was actually here in Milwaukee.
Just hand it to him. Like, I knew he supposed to have a title shot or whatever, but fight somebody for it. Why handed it to him?
Because I guess Triple H right at that point in time was like the biggest thing on Raw at the time, because it kind of made sense because he was the biggest heel at the time. So just handing him the belt made his heel persona even that much better, because it's like, here's the heel with having no title shots, have not earned it at all, and just handed it to him, and the crowd's reaction was like, what? That made his heel persona even better.
And that just made me hated the guy. I think that was the begin of me hating him. And what else was... Yeah, the Raw and SmackDown split around, and I think it was April or May.
You had the Elimination Chamber premiere that year. Shawn Michaels won the very first Elimination Chamber. WrestleMania 18, I said it wrong. It was not 17, it was 18, where the NWO returned. That was also here in Milwaukee. They really didn't even need that. They could have brought Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and Hogan back, but they didn't need the NWO. It wasn't going to be the same as it was in WCW.
No,
it was never going to be the same.
I think their mistake was, it's like they had them both of them lose at WrestleMania, and try to make them... If you're trying to make like a stable, like a big thing, you don't have them lose in their first match return, no matter what the difference is.
The build-up was good, but then the outcome wasn't, because Hogan definitely should have beat The Rock. It have made the NWO that much better for Hogan to have come in as the leader of the NWO and take out The Rock. It'd have been that much better. But apparently, since for whatever reason, it was Hogan's time to revert back to red and yellow, and Scott Hall and Kevin Nash just kind of faded into existence because of Scott Hall's personal demons and whatever. So, yeah. And like they said at the time, they really didn't have any competition. So it's like they had to try all that hard to make an outstanding show. They had nobody to actually go up against. They could pretty much have, like they doing now, they can pretty much do whatever they want, and people are just going to be like, hey, you're going to watch it anyway.
But 2002 was also the creation of the New War. Well, it's not that much of a war now, but it's a new war with TNA and Ring of Honor both debuting that same year in the fall. Oh. Yeah, you can't do that.
Okay, are you ready for what they consider the best year in wrestling?
Sure.
2000. Should I tell you why?
Yeah.
It said, upon its bloodied knees and unable to form a fist to fight with, WCW looked upon the WWE Empire and used one of its last breaths to whisper mercy. Vince McMahon looked down on them from his Titan Towers, simply said no. WWE spent the year 2000 celebrating and showcasing just how they had conquered the wrestling world. A big part of its credit had to go to Triple H, whose heated on-screen and off-screen relationship with Stephanie McMahon propelled him to the
Down.
to the top of the card. That really wasn't necessary at all because that freaking hurt.
All I did was move my leg. I didn't mean for that to happen.
Top of the cards and into the prime of his career. His work during the year 2000 was equal to the greatest work of any champion in wrestling history. That's especially true of his feud with Mick Foley and his stellar continued rivalry with The Rock, which included an outstanding Iron Man match.
Mm-hmm.
The funny thing about 2000, though, was that it was filled with so much talent that you could have a Hall of Fame wrestlers doing curtain jerks only because there were other Hall of Fame wrestlers filling out the rest of the card. The influx of talent that WWE received courtesy of the arrival. I don't even know what that says.
Arrival of the Radicals.
Radicals.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
The rise of Chris Jericho and Kurt Angle, the maturation of the company's young tag team division, and the eventual returns of Undertaker and Stone Cold meant your average Raw and pay-per-view looked like a dream match supercard. Never before had WWE had so many incredible wrestlers to work with, and yet they somehow found a way to insert nearly all of them into a compelling series of angles. Containing more classic moments than 2002, more attitude than 97, and more intelligent booking than 98. This was the year that WWE figured out what it did best and provided nothing but the good stuff.
But it seems like they can't do that now.
True.
I don't know where that, I think a lot of it was, in my opinion, as soon as they started saying they had to be known as an entertainment company. Do you know what I mean? It went from being wrestling and pro wrestling and all this, like it then went over to being wrestling entertainment.
Right.
And in my opinion, it was when they did that transition and then they brought in soap writers. That's when everything to me seemed to go belly up because they seemed more interested in a story than they did in actual wrestling. If you remember, there was a point where we started counting how many wrestling matches were going on in a show.
Mm-hmm.
And this was before WWE went, when Monday Night Raw was still 2 hours. And I think there was one time when they were only showing 4 matches in 2 hours. And there was one night where we only saw 3. And so much time was spent with talking. And I think now that they've started to get that they can't do that all the time. But they still haven't got those good writers they had before who were able to carry and make a show what it's, used to be. And until they actually, to me, they really need to go back with the writers and say, okay, where have we gone wrong? Because you have some amazing, amazing talent that are there. You just don't have the backup with the storylines to go through with it.
Right. Yeah, I get what you're saying with that. And like, I'm not saying like from when they had to go to, as people call it, the PG era, because I still enjoyed it. It just, this year and maybe the past couple of years, it just started to.
It's been so up and down.
Right.
You've either walked away from a show, so to speak, and said, damn, that was good. Or we've been like, what the hell did we just waste our time on? Or you end up questioning whether or not you really want to carry on watching.
Right, and I know some people don't understand because like what they see on TV, like last week, for example, like I guess if like you like and try to enjoy yourself, pay attention to the match, like entertain yourself, like by watching the matches and thinking like, maybe it should have went this way. Is it gonna go that way? Nope, went the other way. But going to live shows still keep me entertained. But just watching on TV and just like seeing what they doing the past few years, especially with the Brock Lesnar thing, like him holding the title and not defending it on maybe a few Raw shows or maybe defending on more than like the main four pay-per-view.
Right.
I was gonna mention something about 2002. It was like it debuted at TLC, which the pay-per-view was coming up next Sunday. So that kind of debuted that match for WrestleMania.
WrestleMania 2000, yeah.
Yep, and they did it again at SummerSlam, like we were seeing earlier today when they were showing it.
Hardy Boy, Dudley, Leslie Christian, same outcome to the same exact match.
I didn't even realize that until it was just mentioned. That I was like, I knew Ed and Christian won WrestleMania, but I just forgot that they won the SummerSlam. Yeah, and they
With
had
that one, they didn't do that right. They could have at least had every tag team hold the belts at least once, because they had the same match 3 different times. Each team could have had the belts at least one time, but they had the same team win the same match 3 times in a row. It's like, what was the point? Because
right.
they had the first one at WrestleMania. They had the second one at SummerSlam. They had the third one at Royal Rumble. It was the same outcome. Edge and Christian won every single time. It was like,
Oh, they won the 2001 Royal Rumble?
yeah, they won every single time. It's like why have the same match 3 times if the outcome is going to be exactly the same? The only difference was like some of the elaborate ways that Jeff Hardy showed that he could do a swanton bomb for pretty much anywhere in the arena. Like in 2016, he did it off the top of a ladder. At WrestleMania 2000, he did it from the top of a ladder. SummerSlam, he did it on top of a higher ladder on the outside the ring. Royal Rumble, he did it from the entranceway. It's like, okay,
with tables.
I was like, okay, I can understand the concept of that being like the big pop of the show, but to have the same outcome all 3 times, it was like, what was the point of having 3 matches to have the outcome be the same every single time?
Yeah, I get that part.
Okay, so should I see what Google says is the top 10 wrestlers of all time, and we'll discuss them? Okay, hold on. What are the top 10 oh, damn it. What are the top 10 wrestlers of all time?
Well, they about to go back into the archives with this one.
Professional wrestlers frequently mentioned on the web include Hulk Hogan, Dwayne Johnson, Ric Flair, and others.
Okay, so we'll do it from the pictures that they've got here then, okay?
Okay.
First one, Hulk Hogan.
What can you say?
He was Mr. Wrestling. Let's be perfectly honest. You
Right.
could not, from
What can
literally
you say?
from my age onwards, and I'm like 44.
So like this, what can't you say?
If you don't know who Hulk Hogan is,
Just
yeah.
stop watching wrestling.
yeah.
Because ain't no point then. You'd have missed all of it.
It's mainly like he was that it guy for the generation.
For 2 decades.
And you know what part of it had to do with, and I can speak as being older than you two guys during this time, is that when you hit the 80s politically and worldwide, we were in what they called the Cold War,
Yep.
which was the superpowers of the East and the West. So it was like the Western part of the world was going against like East Germany and Russia, Czechoslovakia, and all that lot. And a lot of the things that went on in wrestling involved East versus West.
Yep.
And it will Iron Sheik. We were against Iran and all that lot during this time.
That's when Sergeant Slaughter made
Yeah.
his pledge to Iran. WrestleMania 7 was the lead up to it.
Yeah. And so there was all these different events that were going on in the world, which WWE was actually smart enough to bring into the ring.
Yep.
Because then you really could stand there and take a side. You had the likes of Sergeant Slaughter and Hulk Hogan come out, and the crowds went absolutely nuts for them because they were coming out and saying, we're fighting for everybody here. We are America. We are the West. We are the ones who are going to kick those commie bastards' asses.
Nah, that was Sergeant Slaughter.
And-
Turn
That's basically where, the start of that came from. And they built Hulk Hogan up in such a time frame where you wanted to have that person who was everybody's hero.
The real American.
Yeah. And so that's why Hulk Hogan was so, so popular. Okay, the next person, what's your thoughts before I move on?
Like I said, what can't you say about Hogan? He's done it all. There's nothing that he has not done.
Exactly. Plus, like, either after he left, like, WCW, before he went to WWE, he did, like, I think he did New Japan.
Oh, yeah,
I
yes, he
believe
is.
so.
Yep.
Okay, the next one, Dwayne Johnson.
We can move on because everybody knows who The Rock is. There'd be no point in us talking about The Rock. Everybody know who he is.
Well, it's like from WWE Superstar to Hollywood.
Everybody knows who The Rock is.
And I think a lot of people actually had a problem with The Rock because there was a point in time when he completely renounced his wrestling career. He
Right.
didn't want to be known for his wrestling career. He gave no acknowledgement to his wrestling career. But I think over time it's kind of, he's realized, he's matured basically, let's be honest. When
Right.
he first started, he was a young guy. He was thrown into the fame, the fortune, and all that lot. And now he's a more mature guy. He's, seen how fickle movie businesses and wrestling businesses. And he realizes, you know what, okay, the fans still know me as The Rock. I may be promoted as Dwayne Johnson, but to millions of people, I am always going to be The Rock. You know damn well that guy could win an Oscar. He could win a BAFTA, which is the British Oscars. He could win a Tony Award. He could make a freaking album and win a Grammy as Dwayne Johnson. And he is still going to be, when he goes up on stage to collect and people cheering for The Rock.
Exactly. So, especially like when he made his like return for like,
What, 3 months? Not even.
no, it was like periods of time when he, I think it was like around when it came to, it kind of started with like 27 when he was like the host and stuff.
Right.
And a feud with Cena and CM Punk, and
That was
with
it.
the tag match with John Cena going against R-Truth and The Miz.
Okay, you ready for the next one?
Sure.
I just have one word.
Ric Flair.
That's 2 words and you didn't let me woo.
That's what it was.
Woo!
Don't know much about him in the past, but just
I'm ashamed to call you a wrestling fan.
I don't. It's like I remember some of the stuff he did in WCW and what he did in
man.
WWE in the 90s.
They killed it completely in NWA. Their poor horsemen were taking people out, but they were taking people out by the hordes.
Yep.
Ric Flair, Tony Blanchard, Arn Anderson, Oldie. No, let's see. The original 4 horsemen were Oldie, Arn, Flair, and Tony. Managed by J.J. Dillon. They were holding every title at one time. They took out everybody. They took out the Road Warriors. They took out Dustin. They took out, who else was on the hit list? Harley Race. They were taking out everybody. And Ric Flair, I swear, that's a bionic man to this, if I've ever seen one. To be in a plane crash, you and the pilot are the only 2 survivors. You walked away with a broken back and still continued to wrestle for the next 40 years.
Well, and on top of that, he was the dirtiest wrestler there was.
Even when he was a heel, even when he was a babyface, people wanted to see him cheat.
Yeah. Because there was just, but when he did it though, he did it with such style. There was just something there. He was one of the ones, as Mike just said, he was one of the ones you wanted to see cheat. You were hoping he would come out with a dirty move. It was like, what's he gonna do? What's he gonna do next? You waited. You just waited and waited and waited for that next.
When he was a heel,
Thing
people
he
didn't like
did.
it. But when he was, people didn't, of course, as a heel, you cheat. That makes you seem like the weakling. But when you cheat and you're a baby face, it just makes it that much better because it's finally like the baby face is finally getting the turn to get revenge on that,
But not
the
only
heels that
that,
cheated all that many times.
but not only that, it was that when he did do it, there was just, I don't know, when he didn't cheat, it was disappointing. It really was, because he has set the bar so high on the dirty things that he did. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't just that he was good at it. He
Right.
set the bar for everybody. Let's be honest, every cheat move that you have seen of the past 20, 30 years, Ric Flair did more. He did the low punches, the low kicks, hit people with stuff hidden. I mean, cut people, bump people. Do you know the only thing I'm surprised he didn't do was strangle someone with a bra, to be perfectly honest. But give it time, I'm pretty sure there's a wrestling video somewhere of him wrestling with, choking someone out with a bra. But he's the one who set the bar for everybody else. And I'm pretty damn sure that when you've got somebody who comes into the business who says, okay, I want to be a heel and I want to be, but a dirty heel, they're like, go watch Ric Flair's matches and come back to us. Because to me, that's the best way to learn, because that man and his daughter showed at that last wrestling event we watched
Survivor Series.
that she's got that in her as well.
You want to see some classic Ric Flair matches? I can name off 3 people: Sting, Ricky Steamboat, Randy Savage. Him and Randy Savage had one of the, in WWE and WCW, they had one of the best feud storylines ever to run across a wrestling ring, because it was so derived in about something. It was crafted so well that it actually linked into real life. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, it's WrestleMania 8. The build-up match for Randy Savage and Ric Flair at WrestleMania 8, it was so creatively done and ran into Randy Savage's real life that the match was just that much better when it finally happened.
Okay, I got to ask it again because I cleared it out by mistake. Top WWE wrestlers of all time.
No, the first time you said top wrestlers of all time.
They didn't even let me do it anyway.
There's a top 10 or something.
Top wrestlers of all time. Didn't do it again.
It's 11:19 p.m.
Not time. Top 10 wrestlers.
Top 10 wrestlers of all time.
There we go. Hopefully that'll work now.
Here we go.
Professional wrestlers frequently mentioned on the web include Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, Dwayne Johnson, and others.
Okay.
We got back to first 3.
The Undertaker.
Also, yeah, I can go pretty far back with him too. I guess people really finally took notice of him when he was in WCW as Mean Mark Callis, one half of the Skyscrapers, the new Skyscrapers, because their original Skyscrapers were Dangerous Dan Spivey and Sid Vicious. Sid got injured and they needed somebody to replace Sid, and Undertaker came in and he kind of fit the bill. He was known as Mean Mark Callis at the time. But then, his WCW career was short-lived because they didn't think that he would be marketable enough. But Vince McMahon had other plans. 1990 Survivor Series. And he is another man that has pretty much done it all.
And I think everybody knows Undertaker. They know his entrance. He's one of the few wrestlers who's kept the same entrance music. Because as you know, there's a lot of them who've changed it as time's gone on.
Oh, he's changed his. It's been the same concept, but it's been different. It's been different entrances. The original was just the bell toll.
But
He
it's
always
always been part of the funeral march. That's the thing. It's always been part of the funeral tones.
They kind of switched it up a little bit when the Ministry of Darkness came around. They made it more kind of a eerie goth kind of thing, kind of like a goth chant or like a worshiper chant when the Ministry of Darkness rolled around. They made his character a lot darker than that was when the Attitude Era was around.
Plus with the managers
Boy,
that he
man.
had,
Oh
like
boy.
Brother Love and Paul Bear.
I will say this. Don't you think the most heartbreaking thing was after Paul Bearer died and he left the urn in the ring and then he bowed to it? If you did not shed a tear when that happened, I don't even want to know you, because that was just heartbreaking. Because let's be honest, Paul Bearer was such a huge part of The Undertaker. And he was let's be honest, he was one of the great managers. He was one of the great, I can't even put it into words. He was just,
Remember his early careers as Percy Pringle.
but he was just somebody who I think all managers and everything hope to be like. And that first show after they announced that he had died, and when The Undertaker did that, oh God, I know we were all sat there, we're like, nope, just kind of look away, because it was so emotional, and he did it as well, if you remember, at the Hall of Fame too.
Right.
And that was,
Right. And the only thing I guess
I haven't watched that one yet. The one that Paul Bear got inducted into. I didn't watch it yet.
I was gonna say that all the titles he won, he never won the United States title or the Intercontinental title. He never won.
It wouldn't have fit right for him though.
What, to win like a mid-card title?
Yeah, it wouldn't have fit right for the Undertaker.
It would have added more history to him though.
That would have been like, let's see here. Let me try to think of something. That'd have been like Yokozuna having the Intercontinental title. It wouldn't have fit. It just wouldn't have fit right.
Oh.
Okay, you ready for another one?
Yeah.
Triple H.
Next.
Well, I can give Triple H this.
We don't like Baconhead, do we?
There's one thing you can say about Triple H that is absolutely true, and Jim Ross is the one who's accredited to it by giving him the name The Game. You gotta admit that he is just that. He has studied wrestling. He's done it all. He's running the business now. He pretty much is The Game.
Yeah, but he fucked his way to where he's at. Excuse my language.
Exactly.
Okay, we're going to move along, but I want to bypass this one pretty quickly. We'll mention him, but we're bypassing him really quickly. John Cena.
Next.
And I'll tell you my reason for bypassing him really quickly is, one, yes, he has done a lot for wrestling. He has done a lot behind, and you know my feelings. I do not like how the company turned him into their golden boy and make him, the golden boy, basically. I love what he does outside the ring. And I have personal reasons for that, which AJ does actually know.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that was I had a brother who was in hospital in Kuwait. He was injured, and this was when WWE actually still went out to Kuwait. And John Cena actually went into my brother's room. He had a chat with him and was, totally cool, told him he was proud of him. Thank you for everything that he had done. And it made my brother's day. My brother was a huge, big wrestling fan. So for that thing is the reason I appreciate him. I just am not a fan of how Vince McMahon has made him the poster boy for WWE. And how Vince McMahon wants every face to be like him.
The thing I can say about John Cena is he was the one that gave, in my opinion, wrestling hope, where it looked like it was about to, how it is this year, kind of dying down. It was starting to die down for me because it was although it was two brands, it was Raw is the one show you want to watch the most, and it was all about Triple H, all about Triple H this, Triple H that. Then like I said, he came in and made his debut. Randy Orton was another. It was just that class of 2004 that, not 2004, 2002, I'm sorry, that kind of saved me from not quitting on wrestling.
That's fair enough.
And if that was the case, I wouldn't have met any of y'all.
Oh, you would have met me still, because that was different. I met you because of Aaliyah, from what you posted on MySpace.
I can't even remember why I posted.
Hey, you were a fan of DMX and Aaliyah, and I told you about my Aaliyah shoes.
No, I remember about the Aaliyah shoes, but I just forgot why I said up there.
That you were a huge fan of DMX and Aaliyah.
No.
Okay, next wrestler, Stone Cold.
Nothing said because
We just said about it.
right, he already like established his career when he came to the WWE. It was like the beginning of his like amazing career. So
Exactly.
And he can still pull the crowd even now.
Now.
He could
Now.
he could do this. He could come into a WWE show, any WWE show. I'm talking NXT, SmackDown, Raw, a pay-per-view, a house show, anything. He could do this. Walk in, go at the entranceway, turn around and walk out. And you know the only thing people would talk about that show would have been that moment.
right.
Because he still has that presence that he can command that kind of attention from people. Agreed?
Exactly. One of the greatest of all time.
Okay, Shawn Michaels.
Another one.
Another
great.
great.
And I will say this on a
Great.
personal
Another
level.
great.
We actually got to meet Shawn Michaels.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Fucking awesome. Excuse my language. So down to earth, weren't he? He
Oh,
was
yeah.
like so nice and everything. He treated you like he'd known you his whole life.
Shawn Michaels Hickenbottom.
And that to me was one of the, I mean, you had won tickets for us to get, like, it was basically World of Wheels, and AJ had won tickets that meant that we could actually jump the line to meet him. But what we didn't realize that jump in the line was meeting him before he came out to everybody.
Right.
So there was about 10 of us who got to meet him before everyone, and he spent some time talking to everybody, didn't
Right. Yeah, he did.
and he just spoke to you like he had known you his whole life. And it wasn't, oh my God, I'm meeting a superstar. Well, you had that to begin with.
Right.
But then once you met him, it was like, wow, he's really cool. And the thing that was nice, and that we can honestly say that we've seen this with other, like especially you have when you've gone to different events or gone to places where you've paid for autographs and everything and photos, is that there's a lot of security who are like this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when we met him, his security was,
Yeah,
they were to the back.
right.
They were to the back. They let him do his thing because he knows how to approach people. He knows how to talk to people. And yeah, I don't think anything else needs to be said about him. He's just,
I think he could have went like more. I know he didn't want to get any more when he returned, but I just thinking he could have maybe had like a few more title reigns.
okay. Bret Hart.
Excellence of execution. Kind of broke the barrier for guys his size to
Exactly. I was just about to say the same thing. That's where the
To-
Shawn Michaels is, and like the
Like
lower
people.
cape guys. You know, you had like Macho Man and Hogan were like the big guys back in the day. You know, you had Andre, you had King Kong Bundy, you had all the big guys. So then when Bret Hart finally became a singles wrestler, when the Hart Foundation faded out, you know, his first stepping stone was the Intercontinental title, which was like everybody's stepping stone back in the day. He'd be one of the greats for it, Mr. Perfect. And then he lost it to British Bulldog, 1992 SummerSlam, which was their way of saying, okay, you're going to the next level up. So the next level up from that, he beat one of the greats for the world title, which was Ric Flair. And that was pretty much like the company saying, okay, no more, like not really no more of the heavyweight guys being, but we're gonna like put these guys that are smaller, we're gonna put them up front, see what they can do, and see how they can carry the load. And Bret Hart did it for like a majority of the 90s. He pretty much carried the load after Hogan left.
Exactly.
Okay, hold on a second.
Like former WWE champion, former not WCW champion.
Okay. So there's a whole bunch of more that they've got. So we'll go through these quickly. So I'll make it short but sweet. Chris Jericho.
Very good. And especially like all the stuff he's doing today, although he's not like with the company right now, he's
Had most intercontinental title reigns of any other competitor.
exactly.
Brock Lesnar.
Back then he was good. And of course, they want to make him like a believable
I
character.
was a big fan of him back then, to be honest.
I was.
Okay, the late great Randy Savage.
Oh boy,
Legend.
that's a whole show. That's a whole.
We
show.
should do that. We should do that one day. Just
And-
pick a couple of the late guys.
And I'm glad he finally got mentioned into the Hall of Fame, or finally been in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
That's a whole show. We can't talk about Randy Savage right now because that's a whole show. That's a whole 2-3 hour show. That's on him alone.
Okay, Kurt Angle.
Something.
I give him this. He's one of the best mat wrestlers I've ever seen in my life. He's one of the best technical wrestlers I've ever seen in my life. I give him that because, of course, that's what he was in the Olympics for.
Yeah, I believe he was the first Olympian to cross over from that to WWE.
Technically, no. He wasn't the first. He was the first Olympian that ever transited in WWE from wrestling, but he wasn't the first Olympian in wrestling. Mark Henry was actually I go back further than that. Who's that one dude's name? I was just watching
Tony Atlas. I know you're talking about.
Not Tony Atlas. I was gonna say him, but it's not Tony Atlas. It's Ken Patera.
Who?
Old school WWE. Got to go back in the late 80s to know Ken Patera.
Okay, another late
Power
great.
lifter.
Another late great, The Ultimate Warrior. That's another one who is a whole show for
Some
himself.
people would say no. Some people would say yes. On how he was.
Right, he was like if I was talking about wrestlers that was like in that like late 80s, early 90s campaign, he would be like in my top 5.
Randy Orton.
Third generation wrestler. Did better than his father and his grandfather.
Kind of like what The Rock did, but still going strong to this day. And then again, he was very young when he started, so
Right.
still got a lot to give.
Mick Foley.
King of hardcore.
That Hell in a Cell match.
That's another one who you'd have to have a whole show just for him because
Hell in a Cell. That's all I gotta say.
Andre the Giant.
God rest his soul. One of the greatest big men ever in wrestling.
Think he was also did like movies and stuff like that,
Yeah.
but not like
One movie, Princess Bride.
No, he's done a couple. It wasn't just that one. I'll bring up the list later. Kane.
I think he was treated unfairly to WWE because I think there was certain people that he should have beaten and certain titles that he should have won. Like
Isaac Yankum, Imposter Diesel.
Goldberg.
he kind of, let's just
He
say,
didn't get the proper treatment in WWE that he should have gotten.
exactly. And I think what they did with him in WCW,
Was just wrong.
no, it was very good until, like you said, with that
I'm
Kevin.
talking about until Kevin Nash messed it all
Right.
up. Yeah, it was fun. They should have just kept it that way, but Kevin Nash wanted to be greedy and messed it all up for him.
Okay.
Exactly.
The worst chant that in WWE that still goes around now.
Yes.
CM Punk. CM Punk.
They put him on that list.
Yeah, I can understand why.
The pipe bomb would seal it.
That was probably the reason why he's on there.
Okay, Edge.
Wasn't a big Edge fan.
If he, I just wish like that career-ending injury wouldn't, stop him, because it could have been a lot of dream matches that he could have done to this day. But
One of my favorite wrestlers now, Roddy Piper.
Right? Like,
The biggest mouth.
I hate to say this, but to me, he wasn't really that good of a wrestler. He was just a good performer.
I thought he was a good wrestler, and plus, like,
He was a
You
great performer. I give him that. But
talk to him.
wrestling-wise,
You talk to him, it's like you talk to him for like hours.
Okay, I'm gonna go through these ones really quick just to get to some other ones who I want to mention. They've got Rey Mysterio, Sting,
Sting,
Big
that's
Show.
all.
Okay.
Vince McMahon.
What?
Yep. Because then I want to end the evening show on this name, and we can do this again because there's more of them. Because obviously it's not in any particular order.
Right.
Eddie Guerrero.
Lie,
Viva
cheat,
la
and steal.
raza.
Lie, cheat, and steal. Well, since like with Austin gone, they had another persona like him to like for people to people to like, because they start liking the bad guys do bad things or whatever. That was him, but everybody liked him, and I think his short reign as WWE Championship was kind of wrong too. I say he would have held it longer, and maybe he would have been in there longer if he would have died.
He'd had the title at least about 2, 3, 4 more times if he had them before he died. If he wouldn't have died, he probably would have had the title at least 3, 4 more times. It seemed like he did a lot more work with the Intercontinental title than with any dang thing for some reason. It's like he was a lot more involved when he was Intercontinental Champion. Not so
Right.
much when he was World Champion.
Right, and I was also going to say that I don't know if everybody remembered, but they spoiled it out and said like I guess that night he was supposed to wrestle against Batista. It was supposed to be him and Orton and Eddie Guerrero for the World Championship match. They was gonna give it to Orton, but Batista stand out and was just like, no, give it to Eddie Guerrero.
So on that note, we'll leave that where we are tonight. How about we come back Thursday? We
Fair
do the
enough.
same thing. We'll carry on because there's a whole list. Obviously it's in no particular order because there's no way that we would have put like the likes of Randy Savage at like number 10 spot instead of up there in like the number 1 or 2. You know what I mean? So it's in no particular order, but we will come back on Thursday evening, probably a little bit early if we can make it like 10 o'clock Central Time, because then we can really go on for a couple of hours and really talk about some of them.
Exactly. We are also sponsored by Lay's Potato Chips. Go get you some, and also
Dunham Sports.
Dunham Sports. We're sponsored by them. Go to the nearest location near you to get your sports gear.
And we will be back on Thursday. Bye.